Hello, Grace Community Church. Pastor Steve here, continuing our journey cover to cover through the Bible. And today we are looking at the book of Daniel, chapter 2 and 3. And this is pure fun and interesting things to learn and examine. As we look at the beginning of chapter 2, there is a problem. The king has a dream. He needs it interpreted. And so he asks all his wise men and people who have insight in this area to interpret the dream. And none of them can come up with anything that is reasonable. And so he, in a fit of anger, wants to destroy them all. But Daniel hears about it and says, well, I'm one of the wise people that are supposed to be consulted. I didn't hear anything about this. What is the dream? And Daniel has the insight to interpret the dream. But here is the key verse of this particular chapter. This is how Daniel replied. No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. Now, that in and of itself is worth the price of admission. It's the acknowledgement that we can't, God can. One of the things I appreciate about our brother Tom Burke is he often tells some of the principles from AA. And one of the principles is, I can't, God can. And in that principle, if you can learn that, if you could receive that, you have gained incredible insight for living. I find this all the time in my journey of being a pastor because there's so many times I fall short. I had just this week, somebody gave me a number of papers of which was describing factual mistakes I made in my Sunday sermon. And on at least one of them, he was absolutely correct. I made a mistake. I can't. But you know what? God can. And he uses imperfect people like me, like you, to accomplish his purposes. So what is this vision? And this is interesting because there's a lot of discussion, a lot of debate as to whether this is the way we should understand it. Now, I would say it is generally understood in the evangelical community that this vision of this statue with the gold head, which is Nebuchadnezzar and is Babylon, well, the text tells us that this is Babylon. But then the silver is the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. Now, do we know this conclusively? Well, it seems probable from what we observe and what we learn looking at history. Well, we look at history and what comes next, and that seems to be this waste of bronze, which would be Alexander the Great and his kingdom. But after Alexander's kingdom collapsed, what emerges in its place? It is Rome, which ultimately splits between two kingdoms. And all of this, we would argue, leads to Jesus being the foundation of the church. Now, some people in their prophetic word will take this all the way to modern history and compare it to Great Britain and other empires as such. I think we have to walk carefully on that, but I think it's reasonable to conclude that Babylon clearly is the head of gold, silver, Persia, very reasonable, and bronze, Greece, also very, very reasonable. And it seems completely plausible that Rome is also mentioned here. And in the Bible, everything points to Jesus. So this particular map that I got off of the internet, and it says here, Messianic prophecy of the first coming of Christ. I think that's reasonable to conclude because Jesus is the point of the book. We move then to the next story, and that is the fiery furnace. Now, you've heard me. If you've been in Grace any long length of time, you've heard me tell the story of my heart. And I'm not going to bore you with it again, but the issue is I was told I was going to need a heart transplant. God delivered me. But while I was in the hospital wondering what God was going to do, this was the verse that the Lord gave me. King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But, big but, adversative conjunctive, even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Is this verse applicable to our lives today? Yeah, I think it is. What I felt in that hospital room was God was going to bring me through. And indeed he did. But I also knew, even if he doesn't, I am not going to give up my faith in the Lord, because his plans are greater than mine, as we talked about this past Sunday. And so I love this verse. The final thing is there is a description of a fourth person in the fire who looks like a son of God, or the Son of God. Many reasonably have felt that this was a pre-incarnate visitation of Jesus. We sing a song at church, particularly in the contemporary service, speaking of he's been my fourth man in the fire. That is a very simple description, worshipful, that Jesus is with us in those difficult times. Hey, great 2 chapters. I hope you enjoyed it. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.